Listen,
Is the
I'm better at charades.
cardboard separation, does that exist? Is that a thing yet?
Not yet, because
Okay.
the new transportation
Like, where are you going with that?
vendor will come online after July 1st.
Okay.
We're all having
I-
a time with words tonight.
I keep being like, I know at some point I'm going to have to start doing this, and it's not yet.
So, I didn't read the language that was on the agenda. That's all.
Don't trip.
The 6930 is not for the digester. That was just mentioned in this.
Yeah, it's just highlighted here.
Yeah, no, I know, but the way it's written
Didn't I-
here, it says it's for the
okay.
digester. It's not.
Okay.
The 150 was in addition. So it's.
Okay,
this
so
is-
this is what she told, Leanne told me.
So it's,
Oh, you know about Steve.
under the recycling dividends program, under the
Okay.
sustainable materials recovery program. So I think just say we've gotten 6,930 under the sustainable materials recovery program.
As long as Anthony gets it right, we will wait.
So accept
Except a sustainable materials recovery grant and then 6,930 from DEP, and then I would just
cross the rest of it off. Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Okay.
That was it. You guys accepted that grant separately.
Wayne Cam, are we ready? Okay. So, good evening. I'm going to call our select board meeting to order for Monday, May 19th. We're going to go through the agenda in order. We will start with donations and then town manager's report and move through the topics. So,
Move that we accept a donation, move that we accept a donation, an EEC stabilization grant of $13,720 for the Recreation Department Kid Connection RAP EEC childcare license for the month of May 2025.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll do better with this one. Move that we accept with gratitude a donation of $2,574 from the Friends of Winchester Recreation and Community Services to the Recreation Department, DPW, to purchase materials to repair the Bargard bathhouse roof.
All those in favor?
Aye. Move that we accept with gratitude a Sustainable Materials Recovery Program grant of $6,930 from Mass DEP.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Town manager's report.
Thank you. I just wanted to first start by congratulating everyone on another successful Inca Fair this past weekend. I think fun was had by all, and luckily the weather held out, so I think it was a
Surprisingly
good weekend.
well.
Yeah. I also just wanted to give a shout out to our DPW, who, since we had that very heavy windstorm, I think it was May 3rd, have been doing a ton of tree work around town, and then in addition to that, all the work that they do in the spring with all the events we have. So just a special thank you to them. And speaking of work that DPW is going to be doing and others folks are going to be doing here around Town Hall, we are working on some ADA improvements to the exterior of Town Hall and the library. So this week, starting May 20th through May 23rd, the lower section of the lot will be closed so that DPW can do some repairs to the existing sewer line out there. And then starting the week of May 27th, our contractor will be coming in to do some sidewalk work, walkway improvements on the Town Hall side. The week of June 16th, they'll be doing some improvements on the library walkway. And then the parking lot will be fully closed. So this is the parking lot behind Town Hall here from June 23rd through July 8th, so that we can repave that area and complete the ADA improvements to the exterior of the building. With Memorial Day weekend approaching, I just want to let everybody know that the police department and DPW will be putting back the signage on Bacon Street, at Lakeview and Ginn Roads, and Mystic Valley Parkway at Lakeview Road, and Lakeview Road at Ravenscroft to limit the overflow parking from Shannon Beach. This is the same signage the town has installed over the past few summers to help mitigate any parking issues in those areas. A few other project updates. So the Leonard and McDonald Field playgrounds are really coming along, and we're hoping to schedule a ribbon cutting ceremony for sometime in early July. The Winchester High School gym floor project is also moving along. That project should be complete in November this year. The Lynch School traffic calming work is getting underway, and that work should be substantially complete this fall. We expect to have an update from Tool about some additional improvements at the Chesterford at Pond Street intersection later this spring. Ginfield Lighting Project will be getting underway in early July. Shore Road Culvert Project is currently out to bid. The bids are scheduled to open on May 20th. And also the Town Hall and Library Roof and Library Window Project is currently out to bid and is scheduled to be open on May 22nd. And then finally, just a couple other updates. The Winchester Chamber of Commerce Citizen of the Year Award is scheduled for Tuesday, May 27th at Right Lock Farm. Lance Grinsback, a former select board member, was awarded the Citizen of the Year this year. A reminder to everybody that we currently have a partnership with the town of Lexington and several other communities for household hazardous waste collection days. They're occurring monthly through the summer at the Minuteman Household Hazardous Waste Collection Facility in Lexington. If you're interested in going to drop off any materials, you can register online. All the information's on the health department's website. And then finally, the Memorial Day Parade is scheduled for this coming Monday, May 26th. The parade kicks off from Winchester High School at 9:15 in the morning and takes the same route as our Veterans Day Parade through the town center. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Beth?
Are Leonard and Leonard and McDonald expected to both deliver July, or is that Leonard, which seems a little further behind?
The information I have is that they'll be completed right around the same time.
Perfect.
Yep.
We'll just put tarps on the stuff that isn't quite ready for prime time. We cut that ribbon.
No, it's looking great.
Yeah, they're both looking
It
great.
seems like maybe they finished building a lot of the things at Leonard, and a big dump truck full of gravel was there this morning.
Nice.
I was there.
For daily updates.
I was there the other weekend, and there were kids literally around the construction fence looking in,
Yes.
waiting.
with
When
bated
do we get to
breath.
play on these things?
You know what? I will tell you at 8 in the morning, there are kids. There's also a lot of adults doing the same thing.
Good. It'll be good to see it completed. That was one of the pictures we had at town meeting that people didn't see, but it's just coming along to be done this spring, which is wonderful. Any other questions for the town manager? Okay. And for select board, we're all invited for Memorial Day's parade, so if you want to do another, this one's on a Monday, 9 o'clock at the high school.
And just on I know I assume it's just DOT hasn't communicated with us on the RFB on Johnson, because the swim and tennis, obviously, it's.
Yeah, we checked last week and they have not made a
Let us
decision
know.
on that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Next, move into public comment. Is anybody here for public comment on an item that is not on the agenda? If you're here for public comment on an item that is on the agenda, we will have a moment for that. If you are, raise your hand. Okay. That would be no one. Fair enough. So next up, we will take up committee and commissions, appointments and reappointments. We're going to take them in the order that they're published: Affordable Housing Trust, Board of Appeals, Cultural Council, and EFPBC. For each of those appointments, I'll ask for public comment before we invite the candidates up or discuss appointments and reappointments. So would anyone like to make public comment on the Affordable Housing Trust? No. Okay. Yes, Bill?
Before we get too deep into these, I want to make sure we get this out now. For everyone watching, there are a number of other positions beyond the ones we're considering tonight that are open and we need applicants for. So people are aware. The Finance Committee is currently seeking applicants. The State of the Town Committee is looking for applicants. So is the Personnel Board, Permanent Street Tree Committee, and Archives Advisory Committee. So if there's something that you're interested in, please get your applications in sooner than later. We're, of course, going to fill some very important ones tonight.
If people have questions about any of those bodies, they should just email town manager.
Patty, for the most part, yes.
Yeah.
Some of those are run through the town clerk's office, but you can start with Patty, and she and Mary Ellen know who belongs to whom. Okay. So then I would invite up our new candidate, Steve Cagnetta, if you'd like to come on up for the Affordable Housing Trust. And the drill is state your name, where you live, why you want to do this role, what excites you, what relevant experience you have. We do have your application, so assume we've all read it. But if you could just, for the record, who you are and why you want to be on the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay. I'm Steve Cagnetta. We live on 28 Stone Ave. Been a resident of town since '98, so 20 some odd years. Got interested in this. I was on the ZRAC committee, which sort of opened my eyes up to a lot of what's going on in housing. I think it's really hard not to be aware of what's going on in housing if you live in Massachusetts. This town, I think, has particular and unique circumstances that make it a little bit hard, but also it has opportunities that I think other towns don't. And so when I learned about the Affordable Housing Trust, I started going to meetings. It seems like a place where there's an opportunity to make a difference. I think a lot of different groups have to come together to make it work, and I think the Housing Trust has a unique way to do it.
Okay. I know you've been going to meetings because I was talking to the chair maybe a few months back, so always good to learn about what you might be raising your hand for. And if that still has you interested, that's good too. So, good. Any questions for Steve?
I'll just ask, since you've been attending the meetings, has there been anything within the meeting that stuck out to you that's a specific area you may be interested in contributing to or working specifically on?
So I'm a lawyer by background. I work with young companies. I'm sort of very used to being in rooms where people are trying to figure out things that are hard to do. And so I feel like my role often is just to try to help people work through them. And so that was what interested me. I saw the conversations. I would say two things that really stuck out were the interviews with somebody from Lexhab, is it called, and a sort of another group from Arlington. They're way ahead of us from a time perspective, and Arlington has a huge organization. But I think there's a lot to learn, and so I feel like if I were to come on to the board or the trust, I would be able to, or I'd be excited to see if I can reach out and build connections, because I think there's lots of opportunities there.
Thanks.
Okay. So we're going to try, since we have a lot this year, we're going to, don't leave yet, Steve, but I will do the thanking on behalf of all the applicants. We have to have 5 people say thank you for applying, because we're going to do that like multiple times over tonight. But before I say thank you for applying and say you can leave the table, does anybody else have anything more for Mr. Cagnetta? If not, you can take your seat back in the audience, and then we'll move through some appointments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Can I just, you might be saying this, but Patty asked us to please make sure that everyone knows she will reach out to them.
Yes, thank you.
Patty will reach out to anyone who's appointed tomorrow with further information.
Official letters and communications, there's a lot to get through, so thank you for that. So that's for anybody who's an applicant and anybody watching at home. We will close the loop with you in the next business day or two. Thank you for remembering that. Okay.
Move that we appoint Steve Cagnetta to the Affordable Housing Trust for the term to expire April 30th, 2026.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome. Thank you.
All right. Move that we reappoint Christopher Galetta to the Affordable Housing Trust for the term to expire April 30th, 2028.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Move that we reappoint Michael Queenan to the Affordable Housing Trust for the term to expire April 30th, 2028.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty, for having their resumes. And
Yeah, packet was really helpful.
Okay. So the next board is the Board of Appeals. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to give public comment? I didn't see you back there, Ms. Simboli.
Hi there, I'm Dorothy Simboli. I'm the current chair of the Board of Appeals. And I just wanted to comment that we have a significant petition coming in front of us. It's the comprehensive permit petition for Swanton Washington Street. And it's going to start on Wednesday evening. Right now, this full member position that's being appointed, that person is going to be a full member on that decision. So I would encourage the board to choose someone with experience who's going to be able to see us through that process, help see us through that process.
Okay. Thank you.
I think all of the candidates are very qualified, but I would encourage you guys to go with experience.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So we're actually going to call up all 3 applicants, and we actually have 3 seats. Mark Anderson, I don't care which seat you take, but just help me at one end or the other. Mark Anderson, yes, that's how you are on the agenda. Jonathan Cacciola and Lauren Jonak. So I think if you were listening to Mr. Cagnetta's, we're going to start with Mr. Anderson, but who you are, where you live, your interest in the role, anything else you wish to say. We will hear from all three of you. Then we'll, if we have any questions for all three of you, and then we'll ask you to go back into your seats while we debate.
Sure.
So that's how it's going to go, but you can start, Mr.
Kick
Anderson.
things off. I'm Mark Anderson. I've been in Winchester since 2010. Live at 326 Highland Avenue. I am a current member of the ZBA, though I'm an alternate member. And so looking to just step up my game a little bit, be permanent, and help Dorothy out from that standpoint. I'm a lawyer by background. I was a trust and estates lawyer, moved into the wealth management space, but the two kind of areas of focus I think you guys might know from my previous application was when I was in law school was real estate and T&E. So I took every class that kind of pertained to those two. And very much enjoyed kind of the real estate world. Just turns out when you graduate law school in 2009, it's not a great time to go be a real estate lawyer. So here I am.
Good point for that flashback.
Yes.
Okay.
Jonathan Cassiola, 15 Tanglewood Lane, graduated law school in 2010. I can attest 2010 was no better than 2009. I currently practice immigration law, but my second legal job was doing zoning work. I practiced in Cambridge. In law school, I took all the zoning and land use classes I could and real estate development classes that I could. It's a fascinating area of law. I've always enjoyed zoning and land use and appearing before the board and helping applicants, although this would be a different type of role as an adjudicator, not as an advocate. But I think it's so important that that there's neutral kind of decision making and people can be heard, and I just think the zoning board is a great opportunity for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Jonak. I live at 19 Everwood Drive. I am a licensed architect, and my relevant experience is mostly in urban planning for the city of Pittsburgh, where I'm originally from. Since moving to Massachusetts, I've just been living here, but I haven't been engaging with that part of my background. I'm interested in getting more involved in the town, and I think that my experience with some of the stuff that I've done in the past could be helpful to the zoning board. But my interest also was just in getting to learn more about how the town works. And how these processes work here in this state, because again, I'm not from here originally. So I feel like I'm here as much to like learn through the processes as I am to contribute. And I believe in my application I said that I was open to either the full or alternate position, and that stands. I wasn't gunning for a particular spot, so if that helps your decision making, I just put that out there.
Okay. Thank you. And hail to Pitt. I have a Judy.
My whole family went there except me.
As my husband likes to say, our money goes there.
So I got like a pass to leave.
Okay, I'm going to start. Questions. We'll start with Mr. Anderson. Sure. Mr. Cacciola, was I close?
Cassiola.
Cassiola.
Cacciola
Okay.
is the Italian pronunciation, though. Close.
I
very
guess I
close.
don't know another way to do it. But okay. So questions for Mr. Anderson, then Mr. Cacciola, and then Ms. Jodak. So I'll open it up to the board.
I can ask a couple. As I've spoken to all three of you at some point, and the zoning board is where I first started getting involved in town, so it's a great place to start. Mark, I know you've been an alternate on the zoning board for 2 years now. Is that right?
I don't think I'm officially through my second. I'm in my second year.
In your second year, yeah. We overlap for a
Yes,
little bit of time.
One
so
whole session, I think. But
yeah.
yeah.
So I've seen you in the zoning board hearings. I've seen you working with the rest of the zoning board as it was constituted at that time. One thing I don't know is, have you actually voted on a petition yet?
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah,
So you've been needed as an alternate.
Yep.
Because my first year, we didn't use alternates at all, I think.
No, I think as folks know, we've had some turnover on the board even in that 18 months or so that I've been on it, and that just plus attendance at any given event. So I've probably been on 7 or 8 decisions at this point.
Okay.
So yeah.
Have you written any of the decisions?
Just finished one today.
Okay.
Yes, I've written several. But
Has there been an occasion where you've had to, or you found yourself voting against a petition?
of the ones that I voted on, I can't think of any ones that we voted against or that I voted against. I know we've had petitions that we have voted down. I'm not sure, I can't remember if I was a voting member though on those. So.
Can you think of any petitions where you had to work with the applicant to maybe revise what they were doing? Because the zoning process is very complicated, and some people come with attorneys and some people don't.
Yep.
And one of the sad facts of it is too often petitioners get to the zoning board, which is the last step, and there's an error that could have been and should have been corrected from the beginning. Have you had that experience yet, and how was it handled?
These start to somewhat mix together. We've definitely had, and I think as folks know, we as a board have been working to try to improve our processes to avoid that, right? Changing forms, trying to get things a little bit more clear from the outset so petitioners know what the process looks like. Mm-hmm. They know all the various stages they have to go through. I can think of, it's probably 62 Richardson. I'm looking at Dorothy. That was one that was just finalized but came multiple times to the board in multiple iterations, right? And one of it at the outset was, I don't know if you guys know the petition or how closely you pay attention to all the stuff that goes in front of the ZBA, but it was a home that was a two-family, but the way it was initially created was, if you look at the pictures in the zoning bylaws, you know, they have examples of kind of massing for two families, didn't fit that very clearly, and so had, you know, someone looked at it from the outset and probably said maybe we shouldn't bring in its current form or fashion. Going through the planning board, going to us, coming back to us, I think it probably came to us 4 or 5 times, went through the iterative process to get it there. But that's one that had someone done a little bit maybe legwork up front, not to disparage the petitioners, they were great, but again, like some of that legwork up front might have been helpful.
Yeah, and my last question will be, and this will be one that each applicant gets, you just referenced how a petitioner has to go through multiple boards and committees before they get to the zoning board. With that in mind, what do you see the purpose of the zoning board to be?
I think, I mean, from my standpoint, and I think some of you guys know, because I was here when I petitioned before, I went through the zoning process twice and had an experience that was a little bit challenging, and so that was part of my genesis for coming on the board. I think that we are, at the end of the day, a relief board, right? Our job is to hear petitions, and if they make sense for the town in their current fashion, and we don't need to go crazy in terms of like designing projects and overly complicating things, I think we should be finding relief. We should be finding common ground with our petitioners to come to a solution. Yeah, that's kind of that's the role that I try to bring to the board, which is being a little bit more compromising, trying to figure out, again, a way to get to a yes that's comfortable for everybody, as opposed to a summary no, right? To say, nope, sorry, we don't want to do that, which was part of the reason why I was there. So.
Okay.
Were you extending that question? Or
Well, I think we'll go, yes. So you can prepare yourself for maybe Bill's answer, but we're going to go one person at a time. So if anybody else has questions for Mark, otherwise we'll go back to Jonathan.
Can I just ask, because I know, and as Dorothy mentioned, you know, the Washington and Swanton hearing is coming up. Have you had any experience while you've been on the board with any other affordable?
The only one we had was on Cross, which was, as you guys know, small. So no, not a comprehensive 40B. So I'll be hearkening back to classes in law school and the handbook, which is helpful, and yeah.
Okay. And I know, having talked to the chair, I reached out to several chairs of these various committees over the last several months, but I know Ms. Simboli mentioned, you know, that you've contributed well on the board. I think with Mr. McDonald's questions, there's always the concern and the commitment for the time that will take, right? So it's a lot of work, not just in the hearing process, but then writing up the decisions. And I assume you're up for it, since you've been doing this alternate role for a couple of years and you've had to see them through. So That's always a concern, is just the availability, because the pace is not your own. You don't get to set how quickly or how slowly or how long it takes.
Yes.
So that doesn't seem to be a concern from the chair's perspective, and that would be
No,
good to know.
again, I've had to do a few and kind of understanding what that timeline looks like. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Anderson? No. Okay. Jonathan, questions for? I will let Bill start. You can start with all the questions, Bill. How's that? Go ahead.
Have you been through the zoning process here in Winchester at all?
No, not personally.
Okay. Then other than that, it is the same question I'm asking everybody tonight. What do you see the role of the zoning board to be, both in and of itself and in the way it works with the other boards and committees that contribute to the process?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Zoning is town meeting's business. Town meeting sets the bylaw, and that The law is the law, although the zoning board is for relief. And so hopefully ours is a small town. We all know our neighbors. We all see our neighbors every day. Hopefully we can compromise and find a reasonable solution to most homeowners and be as accommodating as you can be under the bylaw. It's not an automatic by any means. You can't just give out variances and so on and so forth, but reasonable compromise and dialogue. And that's why we have public comment, and neighbors can make their wishes known and at least have their voices heard.
Okay. Go ahead.
Based on your review of the ZBA's activities and or your review of the zoning bylaw itself, what do you think the town does well, either from the bylaw itself or the process of the Board of Appeals, and what do you think is an area we can improve on?
I think the board is accommodating within reason for a lot of applicants. Even this past week, Mr. Anderson was on the board where someone wanted to enclose their entranceway. I thought that was very reasonable. Everybody else on the street has an enclosed entranceway. There's no reason why that petitioner should have failed because it was within the setback. And then somebody else wanted a mudroom for their back. That would be in their backyard. And again, Mr. Anderson, remember that case? The board approved that. Again, very reasonable. It was not wild variance, not something that was overly inflammatory. There's no opposition to it. So I think Winchester works best when neighbors talk and compromise and have their views heard.
And an area we can improve on, either the zoning bylaw itself or our process?
Well, I understand that some of the 40B stuff is coming soon. We have not met our affordable housing. I guess Winchester's really fallen down on affordable housing, and that's why we have 40B. And that will be a process. I think Winchester did well with the MBTA law. The MBTA law caused a lot of controversy around the state. Milton, most famously, went tooth and nail against the law, and they paid a very, very, very heavy price with losses of grants and legal fees, and I'm so happy Winchester didn't do that. Winchester smartly and rightly decided to obey the law, and I think it's to Winchester's credit that they adhered to the MBTA law. So that's a real feather in the town's cap.
Okay. Anthea?
I don't have any additional questions for you. Thank you.
Okay. Mike?
No, thank you.
Okay. Nor do I, but thank you for applying. Okay. Ms. Jonak, thanks for grabbing the microphone. And I said Mr. McGonigal can go first, so I'm going to honor that statement.
If you could, Ms. Jonak, you mentioned that you're an architect by profession.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give maybe some anecdotes or background as to the experiences that you have, that I assume you had, working with, let's say, good zoning boards and bad zoning boards, and how that might inform your work trying to make sure that we have the best zoning board?
Well, it's interesting that, and his answer was reminded me. So I worked for several years in Palo Alto, California, which has one of the most difficult places to get a building permit. I think probably in the country. It can take up to 2 years to get a building permit. And I was actually working on a project that required a variance, and I had to do 6 months worth of work to prepare for these meetings that then were open to public comment, where people from the town could come and say, this is why I don't think you should enclose your dining room in your own backyard. And and that happened. And that happened to my clients. And so they were essentially, coming and kind of begging for the ability to use their land as they saw fit in a very reasonable way. And it was tough to watch them go through it. It was tough to bill all those hours that weren't even going toward the construction costs. And this was back when construction in the Bay Area was only $700 a square foot. Back in the good old days of 2012. So watching a process that became so, rules are important. Absolutely. Zoning is important because you can't just throw the built environment together without any kind of a plan, it makes for a poor living environment and an unhappy community. So the role is, again, what these gentlemen have said before me, is to create consensus, and where you have differences, the realness of the plans, where life becomes, where it's no longer a spreadsheet and now it's somebody's life, whether it's the town's life or an individual family's. The zoning board is there to be like, well, yeah, of course, please enclose your mudroom, or like, this needs to stick out a couple feet over your thing. We'll make it work. Like, that's totally different than having somebody come and say, I'm going to knock down this 1-story house and I'm going to put up a 5-story house in its place. It's going to cast shadows all over the street. Like, we need to be there both to help people through the non-compliance issues that they're going to have with unusual pieces of property, and then we also need to be there to prevent anybody from coming in and trying to steamroll over everyone who lives around them and change things in ways that would make it difficult for their neighbors to live. So the board should be about building consensus, finding that balance, making those decisions as fairly as possible, and hopefully as timely as possible, so that you're not holding things up and not moving your town forward because it's going to be stuck in a 2 or 3 or 4 year process just to move through the variance portion of the permitting.
Okay.
So when you compare Winchester to Palo Alto or any other community that has the highly restrictive approach you just described, is there anything structural in either the way our ZBA works or in the way our zoning bylaw works that accounts for that difference in behavior? Or is it just the nature of the people on the board and, frankly, the nature of the residents of the town?
I can't speak as well to the specifics of that because I'm not well versed enough in I haven't actually read the whole bylaw for Winchester. But from what I've noticed, just being a resident of both kinds of communities, is that often it is structural based on how the town was set up and who set up the rules and who those rules were meant to protect. And one of the things that I noticed in California, especially in the Bay Area is very, very highly specific, but the entire area, and it's something that we see just like looking at a window nationally, when you look over there and you're like, why do they have that? Why is the housing so expensive? Why is it like a random number generator for like what houses cost out there? A lot of it was the best intentions ended up with these unforeseen outcomes that have made development nearly impossible. When we lived out there, like the amount of land that is protected and there is absolutely no development ever allowed on it ever has created these teeny tiny areas of development that make the land incredibly valuable. And then on top of that, they restricted how taxes are collected, which made it incredibly hard for people to move around because if they moved house, I mean, I had a friend who couldn't afford to inherit her parents' house because the property taxes that she would have to pay on it were like quadruple what her parents were paying, and they only had those artificially low taxes because they had passed a statewide increase prevention. So there's it was done with the best intentions, was to let people age in place and keep their community, keep their neighborhood, but the effects as you put all those restrictions on top of each other started making it so that it became more and more impossible for anything to ever change in a way that allowed communities to grow and new people to move in and new people to live in places. And it just became more and more and more exclusive. So that's like, I've seen some of the unintended consequences of what felt like really progressive actions of the past, and just kind of come with a very measured outlook on finding the balance between establishing and maintaining what people love about a place while also permitting growth in a way that keep people loving a place and keep it in a healthy spot where it continues to move forward and it doesn't calcify.
To give you a specific answer, Mr. Brani, section 3.5.5 needs to be written. And I think Mark's laughing because he knows exactly
What
why.
section are you talking about? Which one is it? Never come up.
Michelle, can we appoint
Pre-existing
Bill to the
non-conforming
ZBA?
uses, we all know and hate it.
Our favorite one?
Yeah.
It's only allowed to serve on one.
Bill can't be appointed to the ZBA? Okay, just checking.
Any other questions for Ms. Jonak? Thank you. Though you all had great answers, and thank you all for applying. As Anthony mentioned, for our first appointment, we will be in touch over the next business day or so, depending on where we go tonight. So if we don't have any more questions for the applicants, you can take your seat in the audience, and then we're going to talk about you, which is always the fun part.
You don't actually have to stay.
You don't have to stay. You can also leave, and Patty
Thank
will
you.
follow up, as she promised to do. So,
So
Okay,
I have
so-
a
yeah.
question, more than a little, but if Mr. Anderson were to take the full-time seat, would we then repost?
Correct.
And then we could ask the other applicants potentially to just include their names if they
Yes.
wanted to? Okay.
Patty, would you like to take that one? We had this exact conversation.
So if that happens, then what will happen is tomorrow I will post Mr. Anderson's application, position, and then everybody just sends reapplies.
Great.
They will send me an email stating whether they want to be considered for the alternate position.
And it would be
Yes.
good to complete his existing term.
Yes.
Yes. So if Mr. Anderson were to be elevated to full member and Jonathan and Lauren wished to be considered for alternate, you would let Patty know. If you didn't wish to be considered, wanted to wait for a full member, you would let Patty know that as well.
And they wouldn't
And
have to
then-
re-interview either.
If it was the same two applicants, they would not need to re-interview. If someone new applied, we would interview someone else. But we would try to close that sort of loop as quickly as we can post and close that loop, so.
It will not be until the end of June. that we-
End of June. Okay.
And is it correct, we have 2 current full-time
Yes.
Yes.
positions with one position open tonight, and then there are 3 alternate roles, and are all 3, at this very moment before you take a vote, all 3 of those are filled? Or are there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you just, you just reappointed
yeah.
him.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're filling an open seat, but the rest of the seats are filled. Okay. So, any discussion? Anyone like to make a motion?
I would just, move that we appoint Mark Anderson to the full position. Historically, the alternate positions have been for really new people to kind of get their feet wet, get a sense of working with the bylaw, how it's interpreted, how it's applied. And so it's good that we're in a position that Mark can move to that full position, and it creates an opening for the other 2 members to reapply. So we're not losing some excellent candidates. That's just my kind of reasoning on that per se. And the only other thing is I'm glad to hear some discussion on the bylaw. I mean, there's a reason why residents at the town meeting create the bylaw, and why residents interpret it on the ZBA, because there is a sense that you have a degree of empathy when you're interpreting the zoning bylaw as it applies. And so that's something that's important to me, is that it's not just a rigid interpretation of the law. And certainly there are problems with the zoning bylaw that need to be changed, certainly 3.5.5. But I think that's important for applicants and residents to keep in mind, that you don't necessarily need a particular skill set, right? We typically get a lot of lawyers in the ZBA because they have history with interpreting language and things like that. So it can be somewhat self-selecting, but I think where we've been most successful is we've had a kind of a broad range of backgrounds that have come to the zoning board. So that's just my perspective.
That's a motion. Is there a second?
That is. My motions are always that long, by the way.
No,
It's
they're generally not. We need to come back around for a second, if there is one. Okay. So there's a motion and there's a second. Any additional discussion?
I would just strongly urge the other applicants to consider applying for the alternate position. I think this is the sort of problem we like to have, where we have more people than we need, and they're all immensely qualified with the spirit that we need for our volunteers. So,
And I think we heard from Mr. Anderson that the alternate position is not an observer, that they are called upon to actually vote and interpret.
that depends on attendance.
Depends on the year.
Yeah,
But
the way our zoning board works is the 3 regular members are assigned every case, which is very different than lots of other towns. And it's a larger conversation I would love to have. And there are times when alternates will go months and months without actually participating. And there's been times when there's been questions as to whether or not they're even allowed to be part of the discussion, which is a very odd thing to have. But as is, especially with this 40B project, it's going to be very important that we have a fully staffed zoning board to fill in the gap whenever anybody misses a meeting, because you need to have a consistency there throughout the entire process.
Yep. Okay. Any other comment, discussion? Okay. All those in favor of appointing Mark Anderson to the regular position, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I vote yes as well. Welcome, Mr. Anderson, and thank you for applying, and look for a new opening window to appear for the alternate position. Thank you. Okay. Next up is the Cultural Council. We have Mary Humman and Marilyn Gagalis. Is it a G or a C? Come on up if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Starting with you in the middle. If you could introduce yourself and why you're interested, what you've learned about the Cultural Council. I think you know the drill if you've been watching so far, so go right ahead.
I'm Mary Humman, and I live at 22 Grove Place. I'm interested because I'm a member of the Winchester Artists Network and have been participating in that for a few years. And last year, when we were doing Art in August, I offered to help solicit businesses, and then Trish Gannon said, "Oh, okay." So when you volunteer, sometimes you get approached to be on a committee.
We've learned.
I'm sure you have. And so at the time, it wasn't the right timing for me for my activities, but this year it is. I have a long history in the arts management as a working artist, as a professional artist. I direct plays. I've been part of choruses, and I am very interested in supporting other artists. I was an arts teacher for many years. I love the idea of funding and helping support the work, and I enjoy Winchester very much. So I'm happy to be considered for this.
Great. Okay. And some of the other, Marilyn, you'll go next, and then we'll have questions, potentially start with Mary. But if you could introduce yourself, please.
Marilyn Gagalis, 34 Tufts Road. I've lived in Winchester for in excess of 60 years. Let's just say that. I started my career at the library next door and spent the next 39 years at the Cambridge Public Library, where I held several duties. But in 2009, we opened a $90 million new building, and I was tasked with starting a brand new program for events at the library to fill all of our rooms with cultural, educational, entertaining events, and that was my charge. And that was my joy and my success. I worked with arts councils, consulates in the city of Cambridge. I work with youth groups, musicians, authors, and I alone had to create programs, find the people to do them, and then implement them. We did not have enough money to give me an assistant, so it was just me. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was able to collaborate with our local arts council and with many of the, I don't want to say famous, but many of the really important people in Cambridge to bring a lot of cultural events to the library. And we did it with much success. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and actually I did all of that with no funding. So I begged people to come, and they came. So maybe we can do a lot more art with a lot less money.
And your connections.
Yes. They asked me to give them up when I left, and I didn't.
Smart.
I still do.
I like that. Okay. Any questions? We'll start with Mary Hummin, and then we'll go to Marilyn. Any questions for anybody?
Go ahead.
I have a fun one.
Good.
We have a new sculpture garden in town.
Right.
We have a number of other sculptures that have been up and other bits of public art. I think it's one of the really cool things about our town that we have such prominently displayed in different pieces. What's your favorite piece of public art in Winchester?
Oh, I like the street art or on the sidewalk.
Like what my kids do with the
Yeah,
chalk?
I love those pieces. But I also like a lot of the things that we see around town that have stories that are really important, that are thoughtful, and that make you think. But I do like it under my feet. I think that's really fun.
I'll let you move to Marilyn with that same question, Bill, because now I'm just curious. What's your favorite piece of
Well,
public art?
I actually like the electrical boxes. I think they're a lot of fun. But my favorite is probably the mural in the library. I've watched that my entire life, learned all about it, the pros and the cons that everyone has about it. But I really enjoy that mural. But those electrical boxes are really creative. I love them. It's something I couldn't do. I'm not an artist in any way.
It was a great
I can
program.
promote programs, but I just can't do it.
It's a great opportunity to find art in places you might not expect to find it,
Yeah.
and to take something which is often
Exactly.
ignored and turn it into something beautiful that hopefully then gives a story to the rest of us. So both are great answers, and I'm happy you're both applying for these positions.
And I'm happy there are 2 positions, because that's pretty impressive.
I saw Peter giving you both pep talks, so that's nice of him to show up as well and support.
Yeah.
Anthony, did you have a question?
I did. Bill's is really good, but I guess I'll ask it anyway. You both have sort of different backgrounds and in terms of what I think in terms of what you would both bring to this board, it's really interesting. Is there a program that you would like to kind of spearhead, or something that you think you haven't seen before in town that you'd love to introduce or try out or bring to the Cultural Council as a proposal?
Well, there is one, and it will probably take the selectmen. There are in some towns vacant storefronts that are used by artists, and I think that would be a nice opportunity for some vacant spots, and they can be pop-up, obviously, until they're rented. So I would really like to see that. So I know that Peter Pulsiver is always talking, or not always, but is talking about how to support artists to sell their work. And art in August works. People do sell their work. The library does work, but it's short-term. And I don't really think the farmer's market works very well for artists. So that would be my hope.
Good answer.
I had a few ideas. I really don't want to say them out loud, but I'll say one.
Say one.
I'm just saving it.
Concept.
It's fine.
Perhaps along the bikeway. I know there are a couple of benches here and there, the Tri-Community Bikeway, and it's a little, there are parts of it that are a little boring and a little icky that could use some pretty and something interesting. And maybe, I know in Cambridge a couple of things we did was, we did poetry on the sidewalk, but I mean, like poetry at little stations where the benches are, maybe the poetry on a bench or something like that. We did some projects like that in Cambridge, and it really went over well, and it included all the community because we had children doing it as well as adults, and it ended up being an annual event. So if we chose a few places along the bikeway, it just might bring some interest to those dark wooded areas.
Cultural Council's going to have to hold you two back, I think. You're coming in with some great questions, coming in hot. All right. Any other questions?
Just say there's an old bathhouse by the.
Oh, don't stop me on that.
Love
A mural, if we could actually get that working bathhouse, which it did, I remember when it did, and that would be an unbelievable place for kids' high school art class to do murals. That'd be fabulous.
Do you want to have breakfast with you tomorrow?
I know, something like that.
Let us meet over there.
Yes.
Walk some around, go.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we will then deliberate, but thank you both for applying. We're grateful to have your interest in the town.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, any additional discussion? Does anyone want to make a motion?
Oh, I also just want to mention, this is the vacuum cleaner. And every time I think there's like a speedboat going by.
Yes.
Let me make a statement about the positions. All cultural council positions are 2 3-year terms. And the reason why these are ending 2027 is because those persons' terms had ended last year. And so this is, we're finally filling it in.
Okay, thank you, Patty, for that clarification.
Yeah. I'd move that we appoint Mary Humman and Marilyn Kagalis to the 2 positions on the Cultural Council with terms to expire July 31st, 2027.
Second.
Okay, any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome, thank you. Okay. Next up is EFPBC. Is anyone here for public comment? Okay. So we have one new applicant interview, Kara Nierenberg. If you were here, could you come on up? Did I say your name correctly?
Did, I think.
Look at that. I'm not going to try
It's
my
complicated. I used to be a Kelly, so I still, I get it. Wow. I know, right? It was kind of me.
I used to not be a Brady. There's a reason.
I'm still a Pryor. Okay, so you, if you could state your name and where you live, and we have your application, but your interest in the role, availability to do the work, and professional background are sort of relevant, application of your experience. So
Sure.
take it away.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kara Nierenberg. I live at 4 Ardley Place in Winchester. We moved to Winchester in 2012 and previously lived on Brantwood Road, so right at the Lynch School. I said, like, we lived at the Lynch Gym. And back in 2020, I first heard about the FPBC when they were starting the Lynch project, and promptly reached out and was like, this is a really cool committee, right? I wasn't really sure how I felt about town government. I hadn't had any direct experience working in it at that point, and I was really interested, reached out, and they were like, there's no open positions, but check back. So, I checked back a couple of times, and then I forgot, and I moved on with my life. So when this position came up recently, it was, really appealing to me and interesting because it piqued my interest early, and particularly for the council, the committee, I know they do a lot of the school building work, and from my read of what's been going on, the next one coming up is Morocco, and my background is in environmental remediation in the environmental field. And looking at Morocco, I see a lot of potential flags and situations. And so I see a lot of opportunities to kind of bring things to the table to look at building in the floodplain, potential impacts to that area based on its historical use and the surrounding properties, some remediation that's gone on previously in that area. Impacts from the river itself on the property, right? So former sediments now as soils and how they phase it. And then, in addition to that, having watched the Lynch project over all those years, it just gets me more and more excited by it to see, how this comes together. As they work through the Lynch project, how they're able to kind of manipulate the space, taking into account the floodplain on that property and, build it as a net zero building. And yeah.
Okay, great. I do have a question, but I think I'll go at the end. But I'm not going to let Mr. McGonigal start this time. I'm going to actually let Parra start if he has a question for you.
I'm, far from an engineer, so I'll just ask a question that was piqued by a comment you made. So obviously the Aberjona has had historical, very high levels of pollution. I believe it was Region 1 of EPA that brought, the action that ultimately cleaned it up through the DOJ, of course. So you made a comment that there's sediment in the river that, presumably when it flooded could have become soil in the Morocco sort of area. Mm-hmm. So just wondering how we're intent very much is to obviously rebuild Morocco. So it would just be helpful to understand what the issues could be, and then how your professional experience just could be really relevant there.
Right, yeah,
Given
so-
that's probably the big project in front of the FPBC as we go forward here.
Yeah, so as we know, Winchester's had a lot of flooding challenges in the past, and the Aberjona is historically impacted by a Region 1 Superfund site, which I'll add another note on that at the end also. But any of those sediments that could have been in the water, both surface water but actual sediments during that time, think if you see the Lynch fields always used to flood, and you'd see this fine layer of kind of silt over them. So even at the time that Morocco could have been built and new soil was brought in at some point, if flooding happened on top of it, there may have been other deposits of materials that may have come out of that floodplain. I'm not saying that they are. I do not know. I've not taken any samples. I have not read any reports. But just an awareness to a situation that could have occurred, in addition to any other soils that may have been impacted historically by impacts to the area that may be at depth right now. But as you're looking at a construction project, you need to consider, you dig up the soil here and you put it over here, things change, right? Contamination kind of move around in that sense. I will add one kind of important caveat to this. I am currently a federal government employee who works in the Superfund program. If I was put on this committee and anything related to the Morocco project was referred to EPA, I would not be able to work on any of those specific points to it due to ethics concerns. So I just need to share that ahead of time.
Thank you.
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
I
For
don't
lots
want it
of
to happen
reasons.
for anyone's point of view.
Unrelated to your application, let's just hope that doesn't happen. Okay, any other question, Paris?
I'll let other members ask questions.
Okay, I'll go to Mike next.
Nothing right now. Just thank you for applying and appreciate it.
Okay, Anthea?
Could you talk to any municipal experience you have, so working similarly with other towns or, kind of in the surrounding area?
Yep, so in my professional capacities that I work in local town, in Superfund sites in local communities, and I spent a lot of time working a lot with their local town governments. And it's actually what kind of pulled me into wanting to work in Winchester a bit more. It's what brought me to town meeting last year. I joined town meeting because I felt that I was spending all this time at this table in other communities. And I understand that was in a work sense, but it made me feel like this was a missed opportunity, that I'd like to kind of share my time with my own community and what I can give back to it. So yes, a lot of time at select board meetings, community group meetings, and such.
Okay, Bill?
I think I have two sets of questions in a sense. First off is kind of jumping on something you said a minute ago about how you haven't gone down there and taken samples and gotten your hands dirty. Do you think that's actually the role that the EFPBC is supposed to play, or what is it that the EFPBC is supposed to do in your eyes?
So I think they're the charge of the town to lead the building and the development of these new schools. I think in some cases when you're talking about replacing the gym floor at the high school, it's a confined project, right? We're inside of a building, inside the gym floor. Mm-hmm. From what I saw through the Lynch project and kind of watching those meetings and following it through time, there's a lot more when you're looking at an entire property and you need to move that building around on the property. And so while I think much of what the committee does is the construction process, the site planning is going to be a significant question, as it was at Lynch, right? At Lynch, it was a more straightforward process to some degree. It was kind of, are we staying in this spot? Are we going to move over? But even in the move over question, that came up in the beginning. Some of the initial plans had it kind of tipping into the edge of the floodplain, and what would that look like? So I think for going into Morocco, I think these considerations need to be looked at for all of them. The earthwork aspect is going to be part of the construction of the project, right? Not necessarily the building aspect, but it's going to have to be dealt with. And I don't know the status. We know whether or not like a phase 1 assessment, depending how you move the building around the property and what you're using. If a phase 1 needs to be done, that would be like your first level of environmental assessment to see if there's things to be considered. So again, we might not get ever to the point of taking samples.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up?
I have a follow-up, because I'll ask this more pointedly. Are we looking to appoint you because you're going to be doing the sampling and that direct testing, or are we looking to appoint you because we're looking for somebody who's educated to do the oversight to make sure our consultants are doing a good job?
Correct. Very much the latter. Yes. No, I am in no way, in any capacity, able to do that.
Yeah, because when you said that you hadn't taken samples yet, I wanted to make sure you knew we weren't hiring you to do that.
Caveat in that answer to my question you were making.
Yes, it was more of a caveat just for the EPA aspect. If anything the town is working on were ever to come in front of it, due to ethics obligations, I would not be able to work on that part of it any longer.
Okay.
Yes.
Did that cover your follow-up?
That was a very well phrased version of my follow-up.
Okay. The second question I had, looking at your application, you stated that you did not feel your children deserve to be in a building with sewage backups, failing heating, no cooling systems, mold, and other environmental impacts.
Yep.
And I don't think there's a single person at this table who's going to disagree with you on that. What do you see the EFPBC's role is with ensuring our schools are not only designed and built to a degree that we want and deserve to have in this town, but are also maintained and have their lives extended to a point that we get the value out of them that we deserve? And not only is what is the EFPBC's role in that, but what are you going to do to make sure that happens? Because personally, I think the fact that Lynch got to where it was and that Morocco has gotten to where it was is a problem that should be corrected.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, all of my neighbors back on Brantwood would tell me this school was a mess when their kids went there 20 years earlier. And so the fact that it got to that point is really upsetting, I think, for the whole community, and that we're seeing another school currently at that situation. So I think, it starts with the design process, right? When you start designing that school, you see what systems you're putting in, and right away, each of those systems should come with an operation and kind of maintenance plan associated with it. And that should be integrated into the first process, right? Don't put in a great, gym floor that we know only has a certain life expectancy and it has to be cleaned a certain way, and then not clean it that way, right? Kind of those simple things that they can kind of start planning initially in the design concept for how it needs to be maintained longer.
So designing with an eye towards maintenance?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Right. And doing kind of cost benefits analysis on what the lifetime of specific items are, right? And you're not picking, everything to every item's lifetime is not going to be 15 years. And it's all going to go at one time, making sure you understand where those milestones are, how to monitor them over time, and when are the triggers for replacement before we get to the point of sticking Band-Aids onto all the places to kind of hold things together.
All right, so you get one more, or is it my turn?
I'm done.
Great. So it sounds like you spent a lot of time paying attention to the Lynch project as it came along from kind of conception to now. I was just going to ask a question of maybe highlight a project or two that, highlight your facilities planning or building sort of chops. Maybe there's a building, a facility that you'd like to highlight that you were part of, and maybe what your role was in that.
Yeah, so my world has really been in the environmental remediation sector. So I have not done building previously. I've had a number of kind of brownfield sites that I've worked on, and I've worked on the preparation for the construction for them and into the beginning of the building phase. But sometimes we say kind of once it goes above ground.
Makes sense.
That's kind of where I'm at. So into, some foundation support things, but not the above ground work. So I've not worked on that.
That's all relevant. So I just wanted to ask, and any, have you done that on school sites in other places or adjacent to school sites?
Not for schools, no.
Okay. All right. So any additional questions? All right. I don't either. So if you want to take a seat, we will then deliberate. But thanks for coming in. Thanks for applying. Okay. So we had this on our agenda back in March, and the board asked to reopen this position, and the posting closed April 10th. Patty and I were back and forth on when we could have the new applicant in. We had town meeting to get through. So we're here today. We do have a new applicant. We have an incumbent who has been on since 2004. And we have an engineer that we have vetted that Kara is an engineer. We believe her, but we've also checked that she is a licensed engineer here in town. So with respect for Ms. Macdiallathan, who has served for 21 years, we'll leave it open to the board to see if we wish to consider a new applicant for the role of engineer, which is required. And when we take our vote tonight, I spoke with the school committee chair last Friday, whatever our recommendation is tonight, that paperwork application, will make sure it's shared with school committee. School committee may take a vote. If we're not in agreement, we will have a joint meeting and 10 of us will cast votes. So I will leave that to the board for additional discussion or a motion, but that's going to be the sequence.
I apologize, Michelle. Can you repeat the specifics of like the last two things you said?
Yes. So we will take a vote this evening. If it's the new applicant and her paperwork has not been shared with the school committee, I don't know if it has or has not, we'll make sure. And the school committee will then do their own process to interview. There are now 2 applicants. If there is agreement on who should fill a position, I think the vote will stand. If there's not agreement, we will have a joint meeting. And 5 of us and 5 of the school committee will cast votes.
Thank you.
Yep.
So start deliberation then?
Yes,
So
we
discussion?
are deliberating, or we're moving motions. We're doing whatever it is we do.
Sometimes hard to tell, but
I think we have 2 extraordinary candidates in front of us. I think Ms. Nierenberg brings a knowledge of environmental remediation, the federal processes around that, which I think are probably highly applicable to the project yet before us, which could be very valuable. I think she brings to Bill's questions the right mindset around what NEFPBC should do relative to what our consultants should do. So I think she would be a terrific candidate. I think Dr. Mathialakan has obviously been on the board for a very long time and has delivered a huge amount of value from what our friend Mr. Nixon, who's here in the audience. I had a conversation with him today, and he pointed out several examples of that were really value add historically with some of the school projects we've done. Civil engineer, environmental engineer, I think both can be very relevant here. Where I come down, I guess, on this is that just given Select Board Policy 1, and I appreciate this is a joint appointment, but after the way it's written, and appreciate that this has been applied most recently before I was on this board, but that a member shall serve. I'm just reading it. 3 full terms, shall not be reappointed until after the lapse of at least 1 year, if no other qualified candidate is available. It's hard to argue that Ms. Nierenberg is not qualified. I think her qualifications are exceptional. So notwithstanding, Dr. Mathialakan's tremendous contributions, I would say that it's probably best for us to stick to the policies that we have written down, which would suggest that we would move forward with Ms. Nierenberg.
Okay. Are you making that a motion?
It's a comment for now.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Well stated. I don't think I have, too much to add. It is, it does become challenging for us as a board with that policy when we look at, 1 to 2 to 3, multiple applicants with strong qualifications. And I think part of that policy and the heart of that policy is also making sure that we have the ability to get people who are interested in being engaged with the town into roles and having some opportunity to open those up. So I appreciate what Paris said, and I'm happy to make a motion, but I don't want to stifle anyone's conversation.
Well, no, we can make a motion. We can
have
still
the conversation
discuss.
afterward, too.
So
But, yeah.
we absolutely will discuss.
But
At any point at
the
which
reason
the
I
motion
didn't
comes
make a
along.
motion is if in case anyone had just a different opinion, I didn't want to jump ahead, because I do think that there are substantial contributions historically with a candidate who the town has benefited tremendously from that work, and I just wanted to leave it as a comment for now.
Okay.
I think this is similar to the position or the situation we had with the Board of Appeals earlier, where we are burdened with a, overabundance of riches in two incredibly qualified candidates. And because I understand that there are other ways to get people involved in this board, just like how we're hoping that one of the two other candidates for the ZBA comes back from the now open alternate position. I understand that the moderator will soon be reappointing people or appointing people to the EFPBC, and that's a way of keeping some of this experience on the board while also following our own policy, which I think is very important for the sake of a select board initiative of getting more and new people involved in town government and in showing them that we are welcome to them and we want them coming forward. And here we're going to have an opportunity where we can really get everything we want, both the current experience and a new perspective. I think following the policy is an important thing for us to do, and I hope that any applicant who is not appointed tonight comes forward and tries it through another venue.
I just want to pick up on the point you made at the very beginning about these appointments, Bill, around there's 4 tonight, 4 different committees and commissions. There's FinCom, there's Audit Advisory, there's Personnel, there's every town meeting. We make it a point to highlight jobs and volunteer opportunities. So, but people can't join if there aren't spaces open. And I think we've tried, in my time on the board, to encourage new applicants, and the policy predates all of us. I think Mike was here, but it predates all of us. We've invoked it on a handful of occasions, most recently in January, before that Cultural Council. So, and it does create opportunities for other people to jump in, and if qualified, right? This is specific to an engineer. But I would even say with capital planning with Jim Johnson, if the applicant wasn't Enzo and it was someone who perhaps didn't know as much, we may well have followed the policy, but we may have had a more significant learning curve or gap. So people need to be qualified. They need to meet the criteria of the role. But we do have a policy that if we selectively follow, it feels certainly less clear and less fair. That's what I would say.
Can I just ask us if we can put a pin in the policy? Or pin. It's been a really long week.
It's Monday, Anthea. Sorry.
That when we're not in the middle of committee assignments, that we come to the policy and we think of a way to communicate it such that we're not getting into these situations where we have an incumbent maybe not aware of our policy stating around 3 terms, so that we're able to communicate to the incumbent ahead of time that we're posting the position, we're like seeking new applicants because we are just interested in so just maybe it's a consideration of how we communicate the policy at some point in the future, and not in the it's hard to sometimes discuss it in the moment.
I think that's a great suggestion. The idea of saying, let's just always be tracking all the select board appointments and anybody who's approaching that 9th year, just to let, in some part, it's to let them know, unless there's a qualified applicant, that unless there's not a qualified applicant, that we can't sort of reappoint. But also, hopefully, people use that as an opportunity to go out and start to do some succession planning of their own, and maybe find some folks and take them under their wing for a year. So I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah,
it's a good suggestion, Anthea, and we can even just put it as part of the application. So anybody that applies for any position, whether it be their first year, applying, or it's there. It's just at a point. It's not too long and complicated, but the message is clear. If
you get a footnote, that's for sure.
Yeah, as a footnote, it's there either attached or on the same page. Probably makes sense.
So just as a follow-up to you, Mike, the application has been adjusted so that it says, are you a new applicant or an incumbent? And if incumbent, how many terms have you served in this position?
Okay. And I think we probably can, probably the, asterisk and, add a little footnote at the bottom of why we're asking that question, right? Just so
Yeah.
anybody
Exactly.
that...
I can explain why.
And anybody that applies has visibility to it. So it doesn't feel so bad when we have highly qualified people that are just trying to serve the community, right? Which we certainly do in this case with both applicants. And, the only thing I would, offer as far as a comment is, we have on certain committees requirements of certain qualifications. EFPBC has an architect requirement and an engineer requirement. And I forget if there's anything else there, but and it doesn't mean that we're looking for somebody to give us free services for those roles. It's just people that are still at 30,000 feet but have the language that maybe some of us, don't have, right? Like if I was on the EFPBC, I would have zero understanding of what an engineer was talking about when we're talking about soil or we're talking about, structural issues or HVAC. So the more qualified applicants that we have and the more engaged members we have, the better. And it doesn't mean that somebody that is an engineer can't apply, or an architect or something else can't apply for a regular position. Our policy only says if you've been there for 3 consecutive terms, you've got to wait 1 year before reapplying. And we've had success with that, with people reapplying on the Cultural Council before. And so there's been a brief break, but still some continuity, and the engagement's been there. So those are my only comments. I certainly would support a motion for Ms. Nirenberg for the engineer position for the EFPBC.
I move that we appoint Karen Nirenberg to the engineer position on the Education Facilities Planning Board and Commission. Okay, I shouldn't have tried that. EFPBC for a term ending on March 31st, 2028.
Second.
So let's just adjust that motion that we will advance Ms. Nirenberg and then share that with the school committee. So I think we're not making the appointment tonight, but we're advancing that would be our recommendation, and then we will make a joint appointment with the school committee.
Great. So should I repeat it, or is that a friendly
Yes, if you
amendment?
could repeat it, that'd be great.
I vote that we advance the nomination of Karen Nirenberg to the engineer position on the EFPBC to the school committee for a term ending on March 31st, 2028.
Second.
I like that motion. At least structurally, it sounds better.
Yeah.
So thank you. Any additional discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That's unanimous. Thank you. And Ms. Nirenberg, it's not over. The school committee needs to meet. You should expect to hear. I will circle back with the chair. I don't know when they plan to have this on their agenda. So the incumbent stays and serves until the appointment is made. So there's no reason for you to not attend the PBC meeting. And between school committee and Patty, we'll be in touch in terms of the timing for that joint appointment when if your candidacy moves forward and comes through the school committee, we'll make sure we let you know when that's official. But until then, the incumbent stays in the seat. And I would encourage you to attend meetings if you haven't already. Attend the next DFPBC meeting and learn a bit. Thank you.
We're going to be talking about Morocco repairs in a couple minutes.
Oh, yeah, you could stay. That's true. Okay. Hey, or you can leave, truly. You can go.
Yes.
No, that's fine. That's fine. All right. So select board committee assignments. That's next. Paris, if you had a chance to look at the list, sometimes what happens with the new person is that the name's in red of the outgoing member. Yeah. Sometimes you can slide into those should you wish, but I think we'll go down the list and see which ones people want to keep or where people want to swap out. So we're going to just start at the top and go in order. We're not just going to go with John Fallon needs to be replaced, but starting with, and Patty, start scribing quickly, and we'll do our best. Thank God.
Just to make a note is that if anyone needs the reading for it, but the last one, the town meeting study committee, is very new, and I have the wording for it.
We will need that? Yes, thank you. Oh, you'll need it, yeah. Good. All right, Affordable Housing Trust. Mike, do you wish to stay on that? Does anyone wish to join the Affordable Housing Trust?
I'd like to stay.
Okay. Does anybody wish to join? There's a backup. We could always have two.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought that someone else was involved with something, and it was John. So,
Okay.
Anthony, did you say yes?
I'm happy to join. I think Mike's really got it covered, but yeah. Thanks, Patty.
I was going to say, I didn't hear it, but I think Patty did. All right.
Patty did.
Audit Advisory Committee, we would like to have 2 members. We actually still need a resident to be on that committee as well.
Happy to do it. I assume the select board member does not need to sign the audit.
Oh, no.
Okay. And I'm happy to do it. Who's our auditor right now?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know?
The audit committee meets twice a year.
Who's the auditor?
The audit
You would ask me that question.
Stacy and,
No. It's like PwC or EY.
oh, I don't know.
Okay.
It's neither of those. It's
Yeah.
a smaller firm.
Yeah. The one duty that I would struggle to be involved in is if we had to replace the auditor, just to be, which I'm assuming happens very seldomly.
Well, it goes out to bid every 3 years, but we've had.
Any concern if I were to recuse myself from that decision?
Okay.
Okay. No, I'm happy to do it.
If you had to
I
recuse yourself from that decision, there would be others who could probably make a
I'm happy
decision.
to. I mean, I naturally could be on that committee. It's a committee with just that there may be some conflicts I have.
Okay.
I'm happy to take John's spot though, unless
Okay.
somebody else wants it.
No.
Unless Patty volunteers somebody else.
Patty? Who do you pick, Patty?
You know, I
And Bill's like,
I think
no.
ours is the perfect addition to it.
Perfect. Happy to do it.
Committee on Names.
I'm happy to stay on this committee. I am on the committee on names, and Sandy Thompson is on the committee on names.
Not anymore.
No, she resigned the moment somebody
I
wrote
am
her
on the
letter.
committee on names, and there is a request to the committee on names, which needs
Which came from precinct 8 town
posted
meeting. So.
It needs a name.
a member of the planning board and a member of the school committee. So just as a note, maybe we should post the remaining position and check with school committee and planning to get.
So I think we should ask the. I mean, I think.
The town clerk and I have had a discussion about this already, and we've discussed it, so it still may be sunsetted.
It still may be sunsetted. Okay.
Meaning the
The committee.
Itself.
Yeah, because you're the only person on it.
I'm the only member because
And town meeting has a committee on
Seamus
names.
is the school committee
Seamus
designee,
is on
which is
there.
yes, who's been on the school committee in
school
50,
committee
40 months.
didn't reappoint anyone.
And
There's
Sandy resigned.
2,
So are we keeping this one?
I would keep it for now.
Unless it gets
So maybe
sunsetted.
we should consider. So maybe I, as the only member of the committee on
You can
names,
do that.
should reach out and try to rekindle the committee on names.
Either rekindle it or have it play out its life.
I'm happy to take it if you want it, but
No, I think one person to decide if it either lives or
I have 3
doesn't.
years.
You have a lot of power there,
experience on the
Anthea.
committee.
Yes.
also I was a signatory on the literal one petition in front of it because it came from precinct 8 town meeting delegation, so I probably shouldn't be on it.
Okay. All right. Next up, the Fields Management Committee. Anthea, do you wish to stay?
I would love to stay on that. Unless someone else is welcome to join. We do not have a voting role on that committee.
I'm tempted to join it, but I don't want to jump in if somebody else wants it. Not that I need more committees, but I'm like, hey, I'm curious. But anybody else want to join Anthea on Fields?
If you want to, go for it.
I would literally, if anybody else wants it, go right ahead. You can have it. Otherwise, I'll take it. All right, I'll take it.
All yours.
Done. Housing Partnership Board.
Oh, I am on that.
Yes, you just needed to read down a few.
Sorry, I missed that.
Mike, do you wish to stay on Housing
Yeah, I'd like
Partnership?
to stay on.
Okay. Anthea, do you want to stay on, or does anyone want to join as the backup or a primary? Okay.
So stay.
Just speak up, right? Just don't be shy. It's not your general look anyway. Cable Advisory Committee.
Stay away, it's mine.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
It's not meeting.
See you in 10 years, guys.
It's not meeting until 2035.
Cicada.
Comcast is in 5 years, so,
2030.
Yeah, if we still have cable in back here.
That's a good point. Cable. Capital Planning Committee.
I mean, it makes sense for you to bump from backup to primary, since I'm
Yep.
talking to those guys a lot anyways, and if I'm heading up the working group that's focused on capital, it kind of synergizes.
Who wants to join? Paris, do you want to join? Anthea, do you want to join?
It's yours if you want it, Michelle.
I was thinking no. I just took fields, but, and given that the state of the town, I didn't necessarily sign up to be lead on capital, and I wasn't sure that would be my second one either, so if it needs someone, I'll do it, but if Paris or Anthea want it.
I'm happy to be a backup if the group wants me to be.
With my experience as a backup was, going to the meetings and only necessary when John couldn't go to the meetings, and mostly just listening in. It's a liaison role, not a...
You're not a voting member. Yep.
No, exactly. And unless we really need to have, some direct communications between select board and capital, it's pretty passive. But it's important because we want to make sure we're keeping these lines of communication open. So that's why we just make sure there's somebody there and that we're talking.
Okay.
It's not,
I'm happy to be the backup. Unless somebody else wants it.
No, I'm not going to fight you for it.
I'm looking,
No,
like, okay.
but it's not a fight. Like if you want to do it, please do it.
guys, we're being too polite. Let's move through this.
We are being a little polite, but I just want to make sure no one feels
I
like
just
they
didn't
got
want to,
pulled over.
Paris gets capital planning, and moving on to Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, next.
I actually am just trying to make sure that it doesn't all land on, like, I'm not pissed at, volunteering for none of John's. That's the only reason I even said that. Do you want to do capital planning?
It's yours. We have moved on to
All right,
Chamber of
we've moved
Commerce.
on.
I got all of Rich's, and then I think planning board.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, I get all Mariano's and a couple others, so it's,
Water and sewer rates, which Anthea got.
that's true.
You have to pry that one out of her.
With cold hands. Chamber of Commerce liaison, that we're trying to meet quarterly, that's not much of a lift. And actually, if we do have a meeting and anyone wants to go, let me know. But we don't have a standing cadence for that, so there's not much backup to do. It's more of an outreach liaison type role. Okay, Conservation Commission liaison.
I'm happy to do that. I don't know if I'm on there. I forget, but
You don't know if you're on there?
Yes, you do right now.
Would either of you want to swap out?
I don't need to. But take.
I am happy to swap out if you are interested in Concom. But there's also trees that John was permanent street tree kind of liaison.
Happy to take trees, but I don't care.
Well, I think Anthony's going to stay on trees. Do you want to jump into Concom?
There's
There's two there.
John's.
I could be
trees
backup on
role.
trees.
John was the primary tree
Okay.
liaison.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the secondary tree liaison if you
So we're going to stick with Concom
I'll
as
stay with
is.
Concom as is.
stay in comp.
All right. Council on Aging. This one does get some calls. It does get some attention.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay with that one. And
I can take the backup if you want.
Anybody else want it?
Nope.
Okay, thanks for being candid. Disability Access.
Keep the deck, yeah.
Put me on the backup for that, for DAC.
Okay.
I'm getting, with playgrounds and playground design, and certainly that's on my radar a little bit with what we've just done, so let me know when they meet. Anthea, I'll do what I can to go, but I think they'll be with a new school and other investments. And obviously, we're also looking from capital to look at our DAC compliance and make some more investments across town, so I'll be the backup to Anthea's prime. Energy, I feel like I said this last year, I forgot I was on this committee, so, but not that I don't talk to the chair. Anybody else want to join me on energy? Or Mike? All right, that'll stay. Permanent street tree. Paris, do you want the
Happy to
John
take it.
one? Anthea, do you want to stay there?
I'll stay.
Okay.
Unless someone else is dying for trees.
Planning board. Bill, you want to stay?
I'm happy to stay. Sorry, Mr. Vanalia.
Does it need a second, do you think?
I don't.
Okay.
Again, it's a liaison position, and when they're primarily focused on individual petitions. There's not much for us to do. It's when there's the bigger initiatives like MBTA 3A or North Main Street.
Okay. Retiree Health Insurance Advisory Committee, that meets rather infrequently, and it's more of a liaison role, so I'm happy to stick with it. I was on it when I was on FinCom.
I'm
Anyone want
happy
join
to
me?
do it with you because I think it's part of workstream, one of them anyway, on
Yes.
to the town. So
Okay. Cemetery Advisory Committee,
if you guys need me to take it, I'm happy to do it. I know nothing about this area of our town department where it is, so I'll just need to.
it's a liaison if they have a question.
Okay.
So it's not much of a, you don't take votes. Okay, we'll put Paris in there. The pilot, we did a 3-year pilot last year, so I don't know, I mean, we're not,
2024, so it'll be up in 2027.
so I don't know that it needs active attention this year. I think it needs a placeholder for maybe 2026, when the pilot expires. Okay, that's kind of a little bit of a on hold until we have a new pilot. All right, Fields Master Plan is on hold. Do we get rid of this one then, Patty? Anthea?
They're done, right?
I think we can, I mean, I think there'll be another one, but yeah, there's no working group or anything related to it right now. So, yeah, we can.
Let's strike it then. If they reconvene, we'll have to get a person. Okay, Housing Production Plan, also done, right? Approved by the state. We talked about that at town meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
we got some time.
Train station,
Bill can take it.
we'll take that up.
It's not an agenda item.
It's a couple of agenda items. Let's get rid of that as a committee, please, Patty.
Get rid of the train station?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
agenda item 5 tonight.
And the cultural district, it's, I think, do we think we need a liaison? Because I don't think it's a working group that's actively meeting. So either this one gets stricken like the other working groups, or it moves up as a liaison type role.
Cultural district?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they had asked at one point for like a,
A liaison type. So I think maybe it moves into that liaison line, Patty, that category. Would anybody else like to work with these great new volunteers that we just appointed? If they need a liaison.
I'm happy to take that.
All right.
So the Winchester Cultural District is not the cultural council.
It's something different.
Right, that's true. It's the district
The sculptures and
of downtown.
works with the Griffin Museum.
Okay.
So Hilda Wongden is on that.
Okay, so let's add Anthea and let's move it up to liaison to that section. And thank you for that correction. Okay. No more working groups. And, well, state of the town is a big one, but we all have our roles.
We're all on that.
All in that.
And Paris, chair, we could, I think that's actually fair. Let's add state of the town.
Okay.
Paris is chair, everybody else has a role. And then new committees. We can sunset the advisory committee from the Section 8 of the bylaw that completed its work. Performance reviews, build.
Sorry, on CPA, I mean, do we
Yes.
have a WCCP liaison?
We do not.
Sort of need one, right? Well, we don't need one. We sort of, in my opinion, should have one.
Select board, we have an appointee, Christina, but we don't have a liaison.
I don't think,
When you ratified there's one direct, right? And then
One appointee, but we
And
don't, from our board,
and
we
then-
don't have a liaison.
right, and then you ratified other appointees too. That's my point, right? It
Yeah.
seems like a very important one to have a liaison to.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to at least have a liaison, so the WCCP has a point person if they have a particular issue or questions or something. I think that's a lot of what these liaison positions end up being, so.
Okay.
No, you don't think so?
No, I'm I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
And
I know it's difficult, but.
Well, no, I'm just taking the. I mean, we appoint all the at-large members on CPC, right? And they just
No,
seem related. Right?
And the liaison positions doesn't mean that you've got to be at every meeting,
of
kind of
course.
lording over
Of
things.
course.
It's just as a contact person, especially if and we have the town manager there as well. So, we are generally represented unless there's.
I think there should be two of us then. So I think it's the right thing to call as a gap. I was just thinking, oh, it's done, like a working group. But if we're pivoting that the WCCP is a liaison role and it moves up in that section, then there probably should be two of us, given that we may have, and actually, we're going to have Christina to a meeting in June to think about what are some of our CPA priorities as a select board that we want our appointee to represent for us. So maybe we should have two people, and I'm happy to stay there.
Yeah, I'm happy to help you out if you need.
So
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just wonder, the way that we developed this, like intentionally didn't have a member of the select board on it. So I think we would just want to make sure that to the WCCP, we're clear that we're not trying to, this liaison is not a membership. It's, the person to reach out to in directing questions or, who to.
Sorry, but why is it different than any of the other liaison roles, whether it's to the planning board or to the capital planning committee or to the affordable housing trust?
Well, so isn't on capital planning, you're you're not a voting member, but you're a
Correct.
participating?
No.
Well, it's there to answer questions when they are asking what the select board priorities are. And that, to me, is the distinction here, because the WCCP, as we pitched it, as we designed it, as I understand the purpose always was to foster more community up approaches to funding and development around town. And, having two liaisons from the select board starts to kind of tip that more towards, government down, which was what we were trying to get away from.
But can we talk about this for a minute? I mean, like, the capital planning committee by law has 3 at-large select board appointments, a school committee person, 2 FinCom people, and
Planning board.
Planning board. Thank you. Similarly, and I don't have it all off the top of my head, but WCCP has a bunch of the same, actually, in many of those exact same bodies, plus AHT and Housing Partnership have a joint appointment, and then it's the same exact concept. And we have a liaison to one that has a pot of money through the BSF and CSF, pots of money, and we should have a liaison to the other one.
That structure, though, was heavily criticized, and Mike did a great job explaining it to me about how the purpose of all the CPA committees across the state was to get away from your planning board, your capital board, your select board, controlling and steering all of the funding around town, and to create an entity that got direct involvement and direct feedback and direct steerage more from your residents. But the way our bylaw process worked in terms of crafting it and getting it past town meeting, we ended up with what we ended up with.
But given we did end up there, I just don't understand the distinction.
My point is, I just don't want them to interpret this as us stepping on anyone's toes. But so let's be clear that as the liaison to WCCP, it's the...
Totally. But David ran the Conservation Commission for years, right? I mean, he would understand the idea of a liaison is not a voting member of the CONCOM any more than it would be a voting member of the WCPC. Sorry, I'll stop.
So are we going to keep it? Do we want one liaison or two? And are we going to keep it? Well, let's answer the question. Are we going to have a liaison?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I just, from a communication and messaging, I don't want anyone to think then the select board, who was specifically not a member of WCCP, is communicating anything other than that word.
Yeah, it's more of our decision whether there's, an interest the select board has in having someone be kind of a fly on the wall, not somebody at the table.
Yeah, that's really well put.
Yep.
They don't even need to go to these meetings unless there's something dragging them to them.
Yep.
Okay. But they know who to email when they have a question.
Okay. So I'll do it.
Me too. Yep.
And you'll do it? Okay. Great. That was good discussion, though. Thank you. No, I think that was helpful.
That was worthwhile.
Staff performance reviews. Bill, do you want to stay on point?
I didn't know that was a committee.
I didn't know it was either.
It's a task. It's not a committee.
Yeah, and that might be something that we should be talking about soon. So I think
Yes, June. We need to. Does anybody else want to join Bill on performance reviews?
Besides you?
Yes, besides me.
I mean, it makes sense.
But would it be a third? It would be in place.
No, someone could take my place if they wish. But I'll stay on if no one raises their hand. I'm good with that. I'm not looking to run away from it.
No,
but if at the end of July, if we want to just close out one fiscal year, and if someone else wants to join Bill, we can take this up in August.
I think this is something where it should be a primary, the chair should be a backup.
That's
whoever
fine.
the chair is, and then whoever's the primary is one of the other members of the select board.
Okay, then we'll leave it as is, and I'm fine to work with you on that. Okay,
It's been good so far.
yeah, we're good. Okay, jumelage, is that a new committee, Mike, or do we just move it into liaison role?
Liaison's fine.
Can we move that up, Patty?
Yep.
Okay. Communication Study Committee, that is,
Do you get a free trip to France with that one?
I haven't heard about that.
no, he's invited, as we all are, but I don't think it's
Yes.
free.
You know what, actually-
You show up, they'll say hi.
Yeah.
Saint Germain en Laye has a stop on like the commuter rail. The
Yes, the RER,
Paris
yes.
commuter rail, which we saw when we were there.
Yeah, they sure do. So let's, Communication Study Committee, I think, is done, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then this is the town meeting, so the last one we should decide tonight. This is Anthea has the language, but it's the committee that was created at the very last article of town meeting. Oh, Beth has the language.
You all have it in your
This is the
packet.
bylaw, the town meeting time.
The certified vote of Article 56.
Yes, it is in our packets as well. Good point.
Yes. So it's to create a committee that will evaluate Robert's Rules of Order and town meeting time and recommend to the Winchester town meeting which should be used in Winchester. Committee comprised of the current moderator, the town attorney, at least one previous town moderator, select board representative, the town clerk, 2 town meeting members appointed by town manager.
Yeah, I'm happy to help out on that one.
Do we have any sense of the time commitment? I know it's just, do we know who's going to chair this? The clerk?
I think it would be,
The moderator?
I would say it's either
Moderator?
the clerk or the moderator, but I don't have any background other than just a gut feeling.
Okay. Mike, you raised your hand. The GovRegs is not there, but I realize it was a member of GovRegs who made this committee, so that's fine.
Yeah.
And Beth, I know Mary Ellen's putting out postings, you will appoint 2 town meeting members.
Correct. I think the posting's up till May 30th.
Okay.
People
Anyone
have been
else?
just jumping at the opportunity to participate.
It would be interesting, Beth, not to put our finger on the scale, but if there was a town meeting where, let's say, Kara, who, just joined town meeting, but they moved here from some other towns 5 years ago. It'd be interesting if someone raised their hand and says, I was a town meeting member in a town meeting time town. Like, that would be interesting. But if we've lived here for, if your whole town meeting career has been here, we're not going to do any differently. But it'd be kind of interesting if someone raised their hand.
Other
That
than
might be.
they would have been operating under the old town meeting time, and we're in
True,
we're in a new
but at least
edition
they'd
now.
probably be somewhat familiar. But we really can't screen for that because it'd be hard to know. New residents, but were you on town meeting? But, okay. Anybody want to arm wrestle Mike for that one? Sold. Okay, done with that. Thank you. All right, we have just a few more items of business. Well, then we have the T. Morocco School immediate repairs. We just had a meeting on this Friday morning. I don't know if anybody has any feedback that they want to share, but I think we just discussed it, so things are moving along, things will get bid.
Right. Staff is meeting tomorrow to finalize the abatement bid that we discussed, and then we'll be getting quotes from the state vendors for the VCT and the carpet tile installation, as well as for the moving and painting work.
Okay. And I know Bill, I was copied on a note from Roger McPeak. I'm going to join Capitol's meeting on Wednesday. So stay away maybe on Wednesday for Capitol, or just be a fly on the wall.
I'm on plane.
Oh, you're on a plane. Okay. I'm going to join at Roger's request.
Okay.
Capital planning. On
Let's
Wednesday.
just talk at some point, because
We sure will.
We should make a comment, but
We sure will.
need to make it twice.
Yes. So it's just, there's, I think it's going to come up, but Roger reached out to me, and there's another meeting that I might go to, the WCCP, but I think I can do both on Wednesday. So I will make sure I
Is there a
talk with you.
particular issue?
Maybe some concern about some of the repairs, and if that was consistent with the vote, but I think if we're going to replace tile all across the school, I don't know the library is too much of a concern if we're touching, 70% of all the other classrooms and spaces. So let's just compare notes, and capital planning also needs to make an official appointment to the state of the town, so they need to have a meeting anyway to make the official appointments to the state of the town as well.
So, as
But I
far
don't
as
think it's a vote for us or a vote for them.
yeah, so for
It's school committee's vote,
on the repairs.
yeah,
Right. Okay.
and
so
which
that's
they've
what-
taken,
They did.
Yep.
yeah.
So, okay, I just don't want to be moving backwards if there's, no authority there for that to happen.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that that's the ask. But
Okay.
I think, we'll know more, and you may know more too, but we'll talk. But we didn't take a vote, and we won't take a vote as select board,
Okay.
I don't think. We asked Beth to come up with a scope of work,
Yep.
to work with schools, and that's what we got. Okay.
And we are putting out bids.
And we have a very short runway.
Yep. Right. Yeah.
So-
Yeah. That's what I mean. I don't want to. We
Yes.
can't really afford even a few days at this point, right?
Whose article was, well, the exclusion would have to have been our article by law, right?
Yep.
In 2021.
Yep.
So I guess we did vote on that there, yeah.
Yep.
We did. Yep.
All right. The next topic was just town meeting recap. So I had talked with Beth about this last week, and even in the course of town meeting. So this is a little bit of a debrief. We had a pretty successful town meeting. Our articles, all except for Comforts Place, were successful, which is good. That's always a good sign. But I had some feedback that I wanted to share with Beth that I think then gets spread around to WinCam, high school, V-voter. I don't know who controls microphones, but I had a list of just some hiccups that I thought made it seemed like every night we had a challenge of some technological nature. And I know there's been meetings, and I know Mary Ellen has had meetings, and this is not an indictment of the town clerk or anybody. But if we could make sure going into the fall that the Wi-Fi is operational. I know several times we tried to log on. There was a comment on the Town Meeting Member Association that the Wi-Fi was not available. If people don't know which network to join, that's one thing, but this was a more mature town meeting member, so it's hard to think that the bandwidth can't handle 200 people in a school that has, 1,100, 1,200 students. Then the spelling of people's names on the voter scrolls, when some people's names were going through on the votes, they were misspelled, just some extra letters and characters. Obviously, the microphones, projectors, and I don't know if it felt like a higher than normal number of clickers were not working, at least on one of those votes. Usually it's like half a dozen. That seemed like there were like 10 people.
Yeah.
10 people. So is that, do things need to be, I don't know, they need to be charged? Do they need to get plugged in? Do the microphones need to get charged? But I think going into fall town meeting, if it's not our town meeting, but we sit in the front of the room and we look responsible for everything that goes on. So if the moderator can be, safely assured that when we turn on the meeting, everything works, I think that'll be good. So if there's an opportunity to just debrief, those are my short list of notes. I don't know if others want to add to it. And I think there's a lot of people to pay attention to all those things, but I'd like to make sure that we don't experience like a projector the first night, microphones the second night, microphones the third night, Wi-Fi 2 of the nights. It just makes us look a little amateur. That's just me.
Yeah, and some of it with the microphones is that it's not that they're not working, is that they die after a period of time. So it can be just kind of a practice where when we
Switch
take a break, they just switch out the microphones or the batteries, right? So because that seemed to be the
It
problem.
almost needs like a stage manager with a little run of show.
Yeah.
Right? It needs someone just come in and just make sure it all works, and then you switch things out. But I felt badly for people that couldn't be heard, for people that were shouting from the front. I felt badly for a new moderator having to try to get through the first meeting and have those hiccups. So I don't know if anyone else wants to debrief. This isn't just like a list of grievances, not just Festivus, but other debriefs of town meeting and what's next. Obviously, this committee that Mike just raised his hand for is what's next for select board, but just open the floor to any other feedback that people want to share or things we want to give for Beth to pass along. All right.
It's a small point, but
Yeah, the one thing I'll just say is I think one lesson we keep learning is how much we have to do in advance of town meeting. And it's not the best place to be educating people who haven't heard anything for the first time or haven't heard anything before then. And I think we all need to be cognizant of putting our presentations together in a way that focuses on the most material information, but be working as a select board to make sure, again, all of that is educated in advance so that our presentation, hits the high points, but is not a surprise to anybody. And
Yep.
it seems like whenever there is a surprise, it fails.
It seemed like our presentations landed pretty well across the board. So
I thought we did great as a select board, yeah.
but still a very fair point. You can never communicate too much, and we can always try to distill things down to like simple concepts and easy to digest stuff, which I think all the presentations did, but we can always refine.
Yeah.
Good point. Anthea, I know I stole your clickers comment from last week, so.
No, I think there was a point where the clickers were not working at all, and we had to take a voice vote, and that may have been connected to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
I
that's
do
true.
notice that one of the challenges is, we get reports at table, or we get materials at, a revision at table on a green paper, on a pink paper, or on an orange paper, what have you. And people still somehow miss that when they're coming in, and then it says that you have this at table and there's some confusion. So potentially it's just an overall thinking of how do we really make sure that people are aware and getting it. I fold it into paper airplanes and fly it around, but an actual, maybe just in thinking a little bit more closely so that people are not, kind of start looking around when there's mention of
The most recent amendment or,
yeah.
A checklist of handouts you should have. I just wrote that down to my list of things.
Well, I
But
think it's just hard, right? You come in, I'm number 2, and I grab my clicker and I walk into town hall with the card to be counted as the next person, and or roll into the auditorium. So, is it that instead someone's standing at the entrance to the door, handing out the paper like it's the program,
it's a good Girl Scout task.
Interrupt people's process of grab the clicker and walk down so they can get those.
It's a good one. Other thoughts, Paris, Mike?
The only other thing, I don't know if we mentioned or not, sorry, is just people moving down from the back.
Oh, yes.
Because that's
I didn't mention that. That's a good
We
point.
took a lot of voice votes, and typically for staff or guests, that's what the back seats are for, and everybody has really kind of spread out a lot more. So, and there certainly are enough seats for people to sit there.
Yeah, maybe that's feedback we can give to the moderator and the clerk. But that was back in the day, a dividing line. And if you needed to be counted for standing counts, you had to move forward and, in fact, you had to stand there and take your vote. So that's a good point.
And the only other thing that, I was going to mention, if there's some way for us to, for staff to kind of manage what's on the laptop kind of remotely, like in the back, we've got the computer.
At that soundstage, you think?
Soundstage there that Mary Ellen worked at for a little bit there. So it's not, so much of fiddling around up there and, waiting to load up people's presentations. It can be, if you've got a couple screens, just like a DJ, you're just ready to slide the one up there
Like
for the next question,
yeah.
So
Share this screen, share that screen,
yes.
toggle.
We need an 11-year-old.
Yes, yeah, right. I know, yeah.
It's true. That's a good one, though, about the seating and,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know if this is so much for the feedback here, but one thing, we don't always need PowerPoint presentations, and I thought that when we were kept from using the slideshow the first night, some people actually did a better job of communicating without having that crutch there. So,
Should I take that as direct feedback, Bill, or?
No, you did a great job without needing slides, and I think people pay more attention to the speaker when they don't have a PowerPoint to distract them.
Okay. I'm glad I practiced my slides because I didn't think I'd have, yeah.
I think Dr.
I was like, oh, there's pictures. No, there's not.
Slides are full of pictures, though, I think.
But say more, show less, maybe. Okay. Any other bit? We can move on to the T.
I'll just say from the project side, so we had several many capital projects that were approved that we're all moving forward with. We have borrowing authorizations coming up for the Woodside Road pump station construction, as well as for the water system improvements on Cambridge Street. So you all will have a ban approval probably in early July that will be renewing some bans, and then be new issuances for those two projects. Morocco Culvert, with the funding of that project, we're moving forward with getting our revised permits into all the permitting agencies and hopefully moving forward with construction. And then finally, we're working on the issuance of the RFP for the comp and classification study that was approved as part of the personnel board article. So a lot to do on the staff side as an outcome from town meeting.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And to complement some of what you did and constructive feedback on others, thinking about how our articles and the motions underneath them are going to be presented and worked through, the way that you break out the different projects so that each one is a separate motion and grouped logically under different articles for funding or whatever purposes, I think that moves things more efficiently because people understand we're talking about this bubble, we're talking about that bubble. When we were doing the amendments and it was just one article all at the same time with 20 potential revisions to it, people got lost very frequently. And that also goes back to the lack of making sure we were all working off the same paper. So as we're structuring articles going forward, and I think, again, we've done a pretty good job of this. I think you've done a great job, Beth. Capital does a great job as well. We want to be cognizant of what we put on the paper, how it's going to be read and turned into real life debate.
Yep. Okay.
The only other thing, Michelle, sorry to add this in, but it would be nice to know that on each night of the meeting what we're going to be hearing for town meeting members as well, right? Not necessarily so they can pick and choose or guess they're going to speak on articles, because people would come sit through a whole meeting and say, oh, I thought that Article 26 was going to be tonight, so I came to speak on it, even though they're not, an elected official or, a town meeting member, right? They sit through something, then they've got to come a whole nother night, right? And it may be bounced again. So just from the moderator's perspective, having just a schedule of those nights, and also so people can see if they want to take a long time on something that it may impact our schedule moving into another night, right? We were pretty rushed the last night, and I think that was just the reality of knowing that there were probably going to be 0 people who would return the following Thursday for town meeting, right? So
it gets down to like run of show.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll have a chance to take this up again, I think, in September, October, going into fall town meeting. But just while it was fresh, just wanted to have a little bit of a recap. All right. Let's move on then to the train station update. We are in receipt of a couple of bits of correspondence from the T this week directed. I'm going to let Beth give the update because they were directed to Beth. I'm not sure I was copied on any.
Sure.
I was eventually forwarded things, but
Don't take it
I was not
personally.
hearing from Nathan. No, it is what it is.
So a couple of things. First, we had worked with the state delegation back in February to submit a letter to the general manager requesting some additional paving work around the town center that had been impacted by the MBTA station construction, some additional work in the Aboriginal lot, some additional improvements in the Waterfield parking lot where there were some puddles. They had done some paving and there were some puddles, and then some additional cleanup work on Waterfield Road. I did receive a letter from the MBTA. Let's see if I have it here. On apologies. May 8th, that was a response to that, and I did forward it to the delegation. I'm not sure if they provided their own copy. And we did, in addition to the submission of the letter, we had a meeting, which Michelle attended, with the state delegation as well as representatives from the MBTA. And the MBTA's response said that they will not be making any of the improvements aside from some minor repairs in the Waterfield parking lot related to the puddles in that area. So that's, I think, the first piece of information, which I think we'll certainly try to work with our state delegation to push back on that a little bit. And the second piece, so back in January, the board approved an extension of the temporary easements, which includes all of the area on Larry Road that's currently closed, which is typically a through street with parking on it along the town common. And the T had requested, those easements expired at the end of December. The T had requested an extension through June 1st of this year, which the board granted in early January. I had not heard any updates from the T on kind of their schedule, so I did reach out to them last week, and I heard back from the project manager from the T on Friday that Larry Road will not be ready to be reopened to traffic on June 2nd, and that they're still completing activities related to the Laraway Road paving and striping, sidewalk, brick paver installation, as well as irrigation. He did not provide a schedule for when that work would be completed, and certainly is outside anything beyond June 1st is outside the duration of the existing temporary easements that they have. So I think that's one, a conversation for the board to have tonight and how we want to respond, and two, I've forwarded the information to our state delegation as well.
Even a vague sense, is it like 1 month or is it the rest of the year?
No idea.
No, they haven't given us any idea, just based on the amount of work left to do. We absolutely
not the end of the year. Could be a couple months.
So in the original response on Friday, which I believe the board was forwarded this email, he said we will be finishing the following areas on town property into the month of June, but there's no final.
Yeah, because they know we'll use it against them, because they won't meet it.
So, I mean, I would say if they can get us a schedule for their work to be completed, like here is my high-level export of my project plan with dates on by May 30th, then we can take minutes in that meeting to say we'll extend the easement through whatever date they have on there. But if they're not going to provide us with any information, it's really hard to say today that I want to extend their easement into like some uncertain date somewhere in the future in the summer, when we also specifically ask them, hey, we've got our farmers market opening there and we want that parking lot and road back.
Town day.
What would they do if we declined to extend the easement?
Well, they are responsible for restoration of the sidewalk and repaving of the area. So if we say you can no longer be on town property, then that work wouldn't be completed. I do not know how much of that area they need for, so that laydown space is not just equipment storage, but it's also so that they can reach up to the platform and do the work up there. It's not clear to me if any of that work is still remaining that they need that space for, or if it's just for restoration of that area. Certainly there's a lot of equipment in there that...
they could be on notice to get their equipment out. They close business on the 30th. We could ask police to not let them access Laraway Road on the 2nd, which is a Monday.
But that would just ultimately slow down the project, which is not a great outcome for us.
Yeah. I think we need an answer before our June 2nd meeting as to Anthea's point, what's going to be done when? Weekly?
We can just extend from meeting to meeting.
If we choose.
Rather than extend it for multiple months.
Yeah.
But I don't think that will register any different than any other course of action.
No, I don't think they care.
No, exactly.
So, I mean,
Because
they are making progress,
it's to our detriment if we say you can't go on the property, because then the one area that they say they'll repave for us.
Well, it depends what they can use the space for. If it's just for the restoration activities, then it's not to our detriment. For example, if you said you can't have any other equipment there, that you're only allowed access there for the restoration work.
I think the good thing is there has been progress that we can see. I think early on our frustration around this was that it seemed like the start of the project was very slow. And so at least we can feel like we are going to be done this summer, right? I mean, and there is a point for them financially, where it doesn't benefit the general contractor to be staying on the project indefinitely, right?
could we tie it, or at least attempt to tie it, be like, listen, we have given you every opportunity to get this done on time. You have now taken a year and a half of parking away from our businesses, our residents, everybody else. We appreciate that maybe you don't agree that you have a responsibility for the Aberjona lot, but you owe us for all the time and space you've taken. So if you're not done by July 30th, then that triggers a responsibility that you do have to pave the Aberjona lot or the Waterfield lot or Waterfield Road. Like, build in some sort of penalty clause that gives us some benefit if they don't get their work done, so that they're actually inspired to get the work done. I don't know if that's worth a try.
It's a new easement, that's fine.
They might
So-
say no, but at least we're standing up for ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's,
Yes, I mean, so what Bill's describing is one way to, but the principle there, which is that there's a cost to the town of them sort of continuing to
tens of
occupy
thousands of dollars.
Laraway, right? With in terms of the impact on our businesses. I mean, it's
Parking revenue.
parking revenue directly, right? That's a good point too. But it's like the first thing you hear from town businesses, right? Which is Laraway, when we're getting Laraway back. And so there is this like, well, we're not going to do anything on your, to help the town on in terms of the Aberjona, which there was at least a comment in, I don't know if it was a letter from the delegation, that they had actually agreed to do it and then they unagreed to do it.
It was in the 90% plans, and then it came out, which we didn't see the change after the 90% plans.
It wasn't in the full design, the 100%
Correct.
design. Okay.
Which we didn't see a preview of before it was the final design. Another bit of detail on that topic, when we had the meeting with the delegation, which was not pleasant, and the T, we talked about the Aberjona. Potholes, pipes broke.
No, it's in terrible shape. Yeah.
Pipes broke, their contractor broke, we had pictures of things, and they said, well, it wasn't in great shape when we started. And I said, are we really going to go and take pictures and nickel and dime, that pothole's yours, that pothole's ours? No, we're not going to do that. There it is in writing. We did none of that. We're not going to fix it. That infuriates me.
Well, I guess that's where I just struggle with their ask, right? Which is,
There is no ask. It's just they're telling us right
Yeah.
now, we're not done. They haven't even asked. Are you going to be done by June 1st? Nope.
Well, if they don't ask for an extension to the easement, then
Correct. There is no ask.
but there's
just an
presumably
assumption.
going to be an ask in the next 13 days.
Well, there will be an ask from us to give us a detailed project schedule, but that their plan is generally, we would have heard from them about now, about 15 days before the easement expired is about when they would say, oh, we need another 4 months.
Yeah, and those two guys would come in and sit there awkwardly,
Right.
and we'd yell at them, and then they,
But last year, it was the night the Celtics won the championship, and they told us it'd be done in November, and then nothing else would happen, and then they did West Medford before they finished us. That's a different story. But normally we would hear about 15 days out that they need an extension of their easement. We're 15 days out, and we've heard nothing, other than we won't be done.
So Beth, I guess, just to understand your opening comment, do they need the easement for anything other than the restoration of the town property itself? Meaning for their construction?
So the easement
At
is
this
literally-
moment,
I don't know.
We don't
the
know.
answer to that question. I don't have
We
their
need to know.
schedule. I don't have the remaining tasks they have work to do. I mean, they have an easement that extends into the Quilt Rotary.
Yeah. No, it's entirely a question of what are the remaining tasks, right? And so I guess I would not, unless I would appreciate it if they would come and talk to us and understand why they've sort of gone the other way on Aberjona, because that's a pretty frequent, I mean, there's a path to, but people are going down to Ginn, use that space, a lot of people park there. So for them to sort of just renege on that, we need them to obviously restore the Laraway area, but that to me would be all I would want to give them, unless they can at least just come and have a conversation with us on what happened on Aberjona.
Yeah, I was
So
thinking.
it's kind of what you're getting at. You're getting to like a proposal. I'm just like trying to wrap my mind around the two concepts together.
Yeah, I was wondering if we wanted them in on June 2nd, or we just want their report on June 2nd. June 2nd is the day after the easement expires, and it happens to be our next meeting. So if we want answers to Aberjona, they will say it's above their pay grade, they will say it's not their call.
they will say they don't know.
And so I'm on the fence if I want to bring them in versus give us your schedule because we won't be doing anything to extend you on June 2nd unless we have a schedule of how much longer we'll live with this disruption.
And to be fair, you can have a project and a schedule, and something goes wrong in the schedule and the project date changes, but you gotta give us a schedule. And if something goes wrong, if the elevator permitting takes too long to get someone out or whatever it is, and it slows you up because it's critical path, like, that's fine. But to, after whatever 3 years of a project, to not give us any sort of schedule of like, yes, we have X, Y, and Z, and we're preparing our punches,
Well,
whatever.
I mean, Phil, you've been on long enough to know that we've had them in multiple meetings, like, every quarter, and Anthea's asked the same question. When you know your schedule is shot, proactively tell us your schedule is shot. We've asked for that. It has never happened.
So we're solving for two things, though.
And they explicitly told us that certain things would be done by a certain time unless certain mission-critical failures happened at other projects. they
And
had
we
to
said,
address.
great, tell
And-
us
yeah.
if that happens.
And they came back and they said, oh, we had to put that handicap ramp in at West Medford. I was like, is that real, like, mission-critical? They're like, no, it wasn't. I was like, well, then you lied. And
So we're conflating two issues. Sorry, just well, we're not conflating them. We just are talking about two issues. So Anthea's point is, I think you'd be comfortable giving them the easement if they signed June 30th and they hit it, right? It's not.
And I'd be comfortable, well, and not that they're listening to our meeting, I'd be comfortable giving them the easement if they said, here's our schedule, and we have this, and like, we're gonna start paving on this date, and we're gonna be done with it July 15th, and like,
And it was
I don't
real.
care what the dates are. Is it June 30th? Is it October? I mean, I care, but like, tell us.
So-
Because the only reason that we knew that the station wasn't gonna be done last June is because you overheard someone talking about it in the coffee shop.
It was the Barletta engineer, and I sent Beth an email as a private citizen.
That was the only reason that they didn't tell us that.
I didn't overhear him. I started pumping him for information. Actually, I was sitting in the coffee line.
But so if they put it down in writing that the estimated dates for X, Y, and Z are this, and this in our schedule, and we appreciate, like, if you would extend the easement so we can get this, that, and the other thing done in that time frame, let's approve the easement.
So this is the point. So that's one view. I think Bill's view, which is kind of where I am, is that they're asking for something. It's like a contract with one-sided consideration, right? It's like they're asking for something, and they won't give us something so simple.
It's no quid pro quo, it's just quid.
It's not a quid pro quo. It's just we used to deliver these projects and I worked at the MBTA's equivalent, and we had these contingencies in the budget to actually like do public improvements for towns where construction happened.
You can't paint.
Can't paint?
They won't paint.
They won't paint under the bridge.
I guess that's where I come to.
And
They're graffiti off the.
they squeezed us for an easement as well, and it's all one side.
I'm far from trying to stick them up because they need a little bit more time. It's just that this was the repaving the Aberjona lot was effectively promised to the town, and all I'm saying is that you've needed an accommodation. We're happy to. We're trying to be a good partner, but sort of be a good partner to us too. We're not inventing scope. This is scope you had at one point agreed to do.
So just so we can move on and wrap up by 10, do we want to have them in on the 2nd? We certainly need a schedule. Do we want them in here on the 2nd? And you could just noodle on that, but whatever they tell us, I'm not sure I believe.
I don't want to waste their time or our time, frankly. I mean, they're just going to
That's kinda where I am.
the same people in here that, as you said, repeat the same thing. That
Not my call.
If it's not going to be people with the seniority
it will not be.
And we're going to talk ourselves in circles. We can talk ourselves in circles around it without them.
I think it's better for us to take the conversation offline with the state delegation and get the schedule that Anthea requested. I think that's valid.
And maybe there's some sort of mitigation we can work with the delegation to say, hey, will they split the cost of the Aberjona with us?
Correct.
With the delegation, you put in an earmark.
An earmark. I mean, it's budget season.
Yep.
You'd think they'd be motivated.
Right. That's a good idea.
We have a lot at stake.
It just makes us.
We've asked for that. Like we said, we just split it. We just got a firm no. But
right. And also, sorry, Mike, but like it's also like we deliver this project, and then the parking lot adjacent to it is like rutted and broken. To our residents, they don't distinguish between
that's the point we've made.
Yeah.
And honestly, like if someone is saying, I'm gonna drive into Winchester and park in this lot to go to the T, more likely than not, they're going to say, I parked here to go to the train and this lot's terrible. Why doesn't the T
The public
take care
does
of
not
that lot?
distinguish that the parking lot is not the T's.
Yeah,
Or
the
it is
public is,
town's.
that's going to reflect on them.
Correct.
Sorry, Mike, you were saying.
So
No, sorry, I'm good.
So we have next steps. We'll get with the delegation. We'll ask for a specific schedule, and on June 2nd, the easement will be expired. We'll decide what we do with it on the 2nd. Okay.
Did they ever clean that graffiti off?
No.
Do we need
John
to?
Sally, I'm sorry.
That graffiti was there before the station was open and accessible to people from the
Still there.
public. And they did not take it off, even though the graffiti went on while the MBTA was effectively the only people with access to it, and they didn't clean it up.
Do we need to extend their easement a day? Or-
No.
Okay.
They'll show up on this. They'll show up on the 2nd. We'll decide. All right. State of the Town Committee.
Well, so I think we all had a good conversation on Friday morning. There's not, really material updates since then. Finance Committee has gotten closer to making its appointments. I'm going to be chatting with the two, Derek, who's our new chair, and Hafiz, who's the confirmed member, and a few others who potentially will help with it tomorrow at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So with that group locked in, I think we've got basically all but the at-large appointments done. And then I think our intention is to, at the next meeting, of this group, so 2 weeks from today, to consider the at-large appointments. And so the advertisement closes on Friday. If the group likes, we can maybe, Michelle, you had suggested.
Should probably extend it.
Let's extend that. So maybe we extend that out to the Wednesday, or to whenever you need it for the packet.
Do it to the 30th.
To the 30th. And then we can still consider it at the June
Or the 29th.
second meeting.
I wouldn't do the 30th because the packet goes out.
Packet is the question.
So
Okay. So the 28th.
It's a Thursday or it's Wednesday.
28th of the 29th.
And would we want them to come in on the 2nd?
Yes.
So maybe in the extension to it, just to add that applicants will
Be interviewed on the 2nd.
on June 2nd at 7.
And if they can't all be interviewed that day, we'll just take a next Zoom meeting to get whoever else in.
Yeah.
So,
And then I think some of the leads are starting to convene. I know Anthea and Bill, you've both talked to me about this. You guys are meeting with some other folks from schools and the Capitol, and
We're going back and forth.
yeah. So it sounds like early stage work, more on plan. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but planning and that kind of stuff is happening. Yeah. But I think we'll have the non-at-large committee decided this week, and then the 3 appointments we can make early the following week.
good launch. Okay. Arbor Day proclamation. We have in our packet. We need to proclaim.
So we have been designated Tree City USA since 2012. I know this is something former DPW Director Jay Gill was very proud of when we became a designee. And so as part of that, we have to designate one day a year as Arbor Day. We typically do it on Town Day, which this year is Saturday, June 7th, and DPW plants a tree in celebration.
Where is this year's tree?
I don't know. Last year we planted one in Town Hall in the back parking lot. And obviously we lost a lot of trees over the past month, so there's no shortage of locations to put a new one in.
Elliott Park
Elliott
seems
Park.
like a good place.
Yep.
Okay. So do we need to move?
Motion? It's you
That we-
proclaim it looks like.
Second. Motion.
Is there a motion? Do we need a motion?
Yeah, just for you to proclaim it and have the chair sign.
Proclaim it.
Proclaim it,
Arbor
Michelle.
Day.
Can't hear you, Michelle. That's not proclaiming.
Saturday, June 7th.
Saturday, June 7th is Arbor Day.
Designate the chair to
I can't wait to sign.
proclamation. I'll get your quill pen out so you can.
Put on my wig.
Do we second that? Do we vote on?
There you go.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Bill, Arbor Day, you're in favor, I'm sure. All right. We don't know yet. That was a good question, though. And then the 175th, we should, if anyone has ideas on items that are of durable nature, we should think about where we want to put it and potentially try to align something with Spirit Weekend, probably in the fall. So if it's a bench with poetry, probably not a tree, but something more permanent. Is there anything we want to do as a select board? So just, it will be in the agenda. If we coalesce around an idea, let's try to get something going.
Have we reached out to, like, not the historical commission maybe, but someone of that ilk who would have a better brain trust for something that would be reflective of our history as a town?
We could put a,
Historical Society.
Historical Society,
That
yeah.
that's take the historical society and the cultural commission and put them together and give us an idea.
Yes, I have not, but I can. I think, well, no, I'm the cultural district liaison, but Hilda is the same person, so I can reach out to her. I was at the ribbon cutting, so I can. And I was going to tie in the Memorial Day speech to the 175th of the town too, and sort of highlight veterans from since we became a town, which is all we would have, right? So World War I, but let's see what we could do. It's a good question. What have other towns done? What could we do? And where might it be a good place to put it? But a plaque, a cornerstone, a time capsule, a bench, I don't know. We should think of something, but something not cookies. All right.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Sorry, Thea, step on you. Just want to keep it moving.
Get it? A second for that? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, WinCam. We are adjourned.
Boom. Inside at 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Oh, I'm right here.
Don't go.